Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Mechanic Mondays. On today's episode, I'm going to show you how to get your brake levers feeling super dialed. We'll take a look at your brake lever's distance from the grips, angle, and reach. For this pro tip, you'll need a ruler and a tape measure. First, let's look at your brake lever's distance from the grip. I like to start with this because it's the most overlooked adjustment when it comes to your cockpit. So many bikes that come into the shop have the brake levers flush up against the grip. With no space between your brake lever and your grip, it makes braking really awkward and really difficult. And you can't really do one finger braking without tweaking your wrist, but we want one finger braking. We do not want 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 finger braking. That's a no-no. All right, let's start adjusting our brake lever. So the first thing that we want to do is loosen up the brake lever, and depending on which brand you have, it could be a T25 or a 4mm Allen. So just loosen that guy up and slide it over. Slide it pretty far over so it's out of the way. Next, naturally place your hand on the grip and extend your pointer finger. Now with your empty hand, move the brake lever so that it sits right at the tip of your pointer finger. You want the tip of that finger to comfortably sit in the curve of the brake lever. With SRAM brakes, that spot is right here. Now squeeze the brake lever and make sure that everything feels good while you're actually pulling the brake. I really emphasize that you should find what just feels really natural, and you want your hand to go naturally on the grip and your finger to fall naturally on the brake lever. Once that feels natural and comfortable, go ahead and tighten up your brake lever. Don't worry about your brake lever's angle yet, just tighten it up however it sits. I like to tighten my brakes just tight enough so that they don't move when I'm pushing on my shifter, but just loose enough so that they do move in case I crash. This way, if you crash, your brake levers will just spin on the bar instead of putting all the impact straight on the handlebar or straight on the lever, and you'll break way less parts by leaving your levers just a little bit loose. All right, now take a ruler and measure the distance between your brake lever and the grip. Mine is at about 34mm. Now let's go to the other side of your handlebars. Loosen up this brake lever and take your adjustment from the other side, bring it to this one, and adjust this brake lever so that it's the same distance from the grip as it is on the other side. Voila! Now both of your brake levers are at the same comfortable distance from your grips, and not to mention, it looks super pro too when it's all measured out. Next, let's adjust the angle of your brake levers. But before we get to work, let's take a look at how your brake lever angle affects how you ride. If you have your brake angled upward, you'll be unable to get your fingers over the lever when you need to hit your brakes, which is pretty dangerous. Plus, braking in this position is really awkward and kind of hurts your wrists because you really have to flex your wrist back to get up on the lever. Now, if your brake lever is angled downward, you can get to your brake, but this will put you in a really far forward position, and when you reach down to grab your brake lever, you can see how much it moves my body forward and moves my elbows forward, which leaves most of my weight on the front of the bike, which is actually pretty dangerous too. Plus, this is just pretty dang uncomfortable having to grab my brakes like this. These angles might seem pretty crazy and unusual to you, but trust me, we have so many people roll their bikes into our bike shop with the craziest brake lever angles. Mainly because I don't think that people know just how important the angle of their brake lever is to their riding position. Alright, now let's go ahead and find out which brake lever angle works best for you. A good starting point when finding your brake lever angle is by starting at about a 45-degree angle. No need to break out the protractor on this one. Eyeballing the 45-degree angle is pretty easy. A 45-degree angle works great for about 80% of riders. With my seat up and my body in a neutral riding position, you can see how much more comfortable and natural my arm and my wrist looks braking with my brake lever at a 45-degree angle compared to the other angles that we saw. Not only will this be way more comfortable than the other angles, but it'll also naturally put me in a pretty neutral riding position. Now I'll get into a more aggressive stance on my bike to simulate some pretty steep DH trails. When shifting my weight over the rear wheels, my arm and my wrist kind of gets a little uncomfortable with that 45-degree angle lever. If you're the other 20% of riders and you want your brake levers to naturally put you into more of an aggressive stance, then we can start to angle your brake levers up somewhere between 45 and about 85 degrees. With the levers angled up, it just automatically puts me into a much more aggressive stance. It's a lot easier to get my weight shifted back over the rear wheel for steep stuff, and also it puts my elbows up a little bit, which just feels really good on really steep technical stuff. You've probably seen videos of some pro racers that like to run their brake levers pretty flat at about 90-degree angles, and I've seen some even kind of run them going a little upwards. And although I'm personally not a fan of running my brake levers like that, even when riding really steep stuff, it goes to show some of the stuff is really personal preference, but for those guys that are riding really steep stuff and riding as fast as they possibly can for days on end, I could see how that could help. I personally like to run mine at about a 75-degree angle, so they're a little bit upwards. It really helps me get over the back of the bike, and I feel like it just helps my arm and my hand kind of sit more naturally, and that's just the most comfortable position that I've found, and I've been running it on my bike like that for a couple years now. So I would really recommend experimenting with different angles to see which one works best for you. But like I said, that 45-degree angle works great for most folks. Another really cool thing about angling your brake levers up is that it forces you to ride in a more aggressive stance. I know a lot of riders that want to ride more aggressively, but after about 10% of the trail, they completely forget that they're supposed to be in an aggressive stance, and they just kind of go back to their neutral positioning. With your levers angled up, it automatically puts you into this aggressive stance, so you don't even have to think about it. Now last but not least, we'll adjust your brake lever's reach. Reach is the distance between your brake lever and your grip. Reach comes down mainly to personal preference. Personally, I like to run my lever reach pretty far out, even though I have pretty small hands. It's just the most comfortable for me and just feels really good. But I do have some friends that like to run their lever reach really close into the bar, and at full power when they squeeze their brakes, it's about touching their handlebar, which is kind of sketchy to me, but a lot of people like that. So again, it really comes down to personal preference. And to adjust this is pretty easy on my brakes. I have this little tool-free reach adjust knob right here, but depending on your make and model of your brakes, you might have to use an Allen key, or you might have this tool-free reach adjust knob on the inside of your lever. Just search around for it and find it. It should be really easy to adjust your reach. I have heard some riders say that having their reach set really close to the bar gives them less arm pump, but I personally have never been able to tell a difference. Again, this all comes down to personal preference. I like my brake lever's reach to be pretty far out so that when my pointer finger is extended all the way, the tip of my finger sits really nicely right in the end of the lever, and that just feels the best to me. If you're confused at how to initially set up your brake lever's reach, just set it pretty far out so that when you have your pointer finger extended, the tip of your finger sits really nicely in the end of the brake lever. Then you can kind of start from there and go farther out and inward as well. Then from there you can go farther out or inward and kind of get a feel for it and see where you like your reach set. Now get out your tape measure and measure the distance between your grip and the very tip of your brake lever. Mine is right under 2 3/4. Now take that reach adjustment over to the other side of the handlebars and dial in your reach to be the exact same as the other side. And that's a wrap. Now that we've measured the angle, reach, and your distance from your grips on both of your brake levers the exact same on both sides, your cockpit should be feeling super dialed and super pro. Those days of completely ignoring the angles and positions of your brake levers are completely behind you. So get out on the trails, play around with those reach adjustments and the angles and everything, and get everything feeling super perfect for you. I'll see you guys next Monday with episode 3 of Mechanic Mondays. And don't forget, give us a thumbs up on this video if you learned a little something. And if you really like us, subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on all of our sweet videos. Until next time, happy shredding!